It is yet another stunning day here in Miami. As you guys can see, I am back in Eastern Shores again, but we're all the way at the northern end of the island this time, and just taking a look around here. It's such a beautiful neighborhood, and it's funny that it's been so hot. It's been such a hot summer here in Miami that literally 85 feels, cool now, or at least reasonable. It doesn't feel hot when it's 85 degrees anymore. When you're coming from 105 with the humidity to 85 with low humidity, feels pretty good. And right before I decided to shoot this video, guys, I was answering some comments on what would be yesterday's video, and somebody was like, oh, I'm unsubscribing, this is becoming fear porn or whatever. But you know what, guys? People just can't handle the truth, I guess. And people that want to listen to the fake information out there and think everything's okay, this isn't the channel for you. So I guess people that want to bury their head in the sand probably shouldn't be watching these videos. But anybody who wants to stay up to date with what's going on in the housing market and the economy in general, you guys are doing yourself a big service by just keeping on top of the trends and what's going on, because the more you know, then the better prepared you're going to be for this housing crash and this recession, essentially. This house that you guys see behind me is listed for rent for $17,000 a month. It is on the water, to be fair, and it looks like a pretty big house. However, the last time they rented this house was for about $8,000 or $8,500. I'll put the info up on the screen, back in 2020. And now, miraculously, they think they can get double the rent, guys. It should be interesting to see if they can actually get that much rent for a property like this. Now, one way that we know that real estate is in trouble, besides everything I've been telling you guys about, the signs that the housing market crash is essentially here, is here's another data point from real life, okay? One of my subscribers, Kathleen, I've been in touch with her, and she's been telling me about her situation because she used to work for a title company here in Florida, and she just wrote me a message this morning saying that she was laid off about a month ago, and she was working for a title company, and since then she has seen several title companies here in Florida start to merge because basically they're going broke. They don't have the money to continue operating when there's not enough deals closing to really stay in business, essentially. So whenever you see mergers of companies like title companies, that's not really a common thing to see these type of companies merge with each other. You know that that's a sign that trouble is here, guys. And now she's unemployed, right? She's been unemployed for a month. And she told me that she went to a job fair yesterday and she waited 3.5 hours just to get an interview there. So she is out there, she's trying, and she's trying to get another job. But a lot of the places that she's applied for already have written her back saying that we're not hiring anyone until 2023. And if that's not a sign that the recession is here, guys, I don't know what is, because that's pretty scary, right? If you are looking for a job right now, you have to go all the way until maybe February to possibly get a job. Well, the scary thing about that is the recession is just going to get worse between now and February. So when they say that the hiring freeze is going to be in place until February, that can easily get extended as things start to get worse and companies need to start cutting back even further. That's my prediction. And so this is why I've been telling everybody on the channel the same thing all this time, guys. Make sure you have money saved, okay? Make sure you're out of debt, and make sure your credit score is good. Do you have your emergency fund? This is the perfect situation of when you might need that emergency fund. Imagine employers telling you, yeah, we're not hiring anybody for basically the next 5-6 months. I mean, can you last 5-6 months without a job, guys? A lot of people can't go, a couple weeks without a job. So this is scary stuff to get laid off right now. And since we know there's so many companies planning layoffs right now, this is why I think now is the time to get prepared for what's to come, guys, because nobody knows who's going to get laid off. You know that if you're in the tech sector right now, you have a high probability of getting laid off. But it's yet to be seen what other industries are going to be susceptible to this recession. So it really doesn't matter what you do for a living or where you work. It's better to just be safe than sorry. That's kind of how I look at it. So what are you guys doing to prepare? Now, another sign that the recession is here. In the UK, they are seeing 60% of their small deposit mortgages being taken off the mortgage market. And what this means is that credit and lending is starting to tighten up over there, specifically for lower end borrowers, guys. And this is another thing that we have talked about on the channel, because as the recession kicks in and really goes into full gear, it's going to be commonplace for it to be just tougher to get any type of loan. Doesn't matter what it is. And this is going to apply here in the United States as well. But I'm just using the UK as an example because it's already happening over there. And what does this tell you? This tells you that lenders in general are afraid to give loans because they are in fear that maybe they won't get paid back, and they'll have to take the property as collateral and then try to sell in a down market when everyone else and all the other creditors are trying to do the same thing. So taking on more loans is a risk right now for a lot of these lenders. So what do? They tighten up their lending standards and only give loans to higher profile borrowers, which fit the criteria of the avatar I just described a little bit ago. People that look like they can pay back the loan if times get tough for them. And that's another thing that's going to make it more difficult, guys, for the housing market in the UK, Canada, everywhere else where they start tightening up these lending standards, because as less people can actually even get a loan, that's going to shrink the buyer pool even further than it already has been shrunk. You know, we already are seeing a record amount of mortgage applications drop to the floor. When you have people that still would be willing to buy that are just getting flat out denied because of their financial situation, that's just going to make the problem even worse. So I think that we're just at the very beginning of seeing how much buyer demand is going to drop, for some by choice, by wanting to wait it out for a better deal and the high rates, and for some because they have no choice because they can no longer qualify. And speaking of the UK, I just learned something about your country today that I thought was fascinating when it comes to mortgages over there. Apparently, they have something in the UK called tracker mortgages. And what this is they are mortgages that follow the Bank of England's base rate. And currently, it's at 2.25%. And this is basically like an adjustable rate mortgage. However, the rate continually fluctuates as the Bank of England changes their rates. So if they decide to pivot, just like they're talking about with the Fed pivoting sometime next year, then your rate goes down. If they continue to double down on rate increases, your rate goes up. And so this is just insanity to me, guys, especially as an American. Like, I could not even dream of taking on a mortgage and not knowing from month to month or season to season what your mortgage payment's going to be, because it just fluctuates with what the Fed is doing. I mean, to me, that sounds insane, and it's pretty much equivalent to gambling away your life savings at the casino. But the reason more people are looking at taking on these type of loans is because the best variable rate in the market right now in the UK is 4.19%, and the best 2-year fixed rate that's available as the time of filming this video is 5.64%. So people looking at 2.25 for the variable is looking pretty sweet right now, and that's why people are looking at this. But they're taking a massive risk and betting that the rate's going to go down and not up. And I don't know what all the rules are on this or the ins and outs, but I would imagine there's probably no limit on how much your loan payment can go up because of this. So that's why it's such a massive risk. And they even go on to say it's recommended that people whose affordability is already stretched should think very carefully before opting for a tracker mortgage, as fixed rates offer stability and the ability to budget regularly. Common sense, guys. But apparently today in 2022, common sense is not so common. So people are doing this. That's how desperate people are to just get into a home. It's really crazy. I actually have another story out of Canada that I want to cover. My fellow Americans, don't worry. A lot of this that I'm talking about with other countries like the UK and Canada is because a lot of this could be a preview of what could potentially come here. So I think it's important for us as Americans to look at what's happening in these other housing markets right now, because that could actually indicate what could be coming our way in the near future. It's not a guarantee, but it gives us a heads up, because these countries in general are in bigger trouble than we are and have even bigger housing bubbles than we do. So we can kind of take a page from their book and see what might be coming our way. By the way, as a lot of you guys can see from my little clip right here, is Eastern Shores is a great place to live if you're a boater, because a lot of these little buildings are all on these little waterfront canals here, and some of these places are still surprisingly cheap. So if you don't want to be paying, expensive marina fees and you want to live right on the water, a lot of people choose to live in places like this because you can just have a small little place, waterfront, and be right steps away from your boat, not have to worry about storage and all of that. So huge boating community here. Now this is the big story out of Canada, guys. Starting in January, the government there is going to be banning all foreign investment of real estate in the Ontario province. This is where Toronto is located. And the reason I think this is super interesting is because I've seen a lot of people mention stuff like this in the comments about our housing market here in the US, that they should ban foreign investment because this just drives up the price even higher. And this is something that Canada is trying now. And I don't know this for a fact, but as far as I'm aware, this has never been tried anywhere before. So, and if it has, guys, let me know where and when, because I haven't heard of a story like this before. But this is going to be a good experiment to see how something like this would work out. And it doesn't say for how long they're banning foreign investment for as far as the time period, but it does say that once the ban is over, they will have a 25% tax for any foreign investor looking to buy in this region for the time being. So any foreign investor will be looking at paying a 25% premium on the property that they would be investing in if you're not a local, because apparently the housing situation there is so desperate for locals that they're saying that by 2030 in Ontario, there are projected to be more new households than there are new homes being built. So literally the demand for housing there is going to be higher than what's even available. And that's why they're implementing these drastic measures, because they're literally running out of places for people to live there. So that's pretty crazy. And like I showed you guys a couple videos ago, and I'm sure this is the case in Canada too, there's no shortage of vacant land out there to build houses and new developments and even whole new cities, guys. We have a ton of vacant land here in the United States, all across the country. In every state I drove through, we have a lot of vacant land, and I'm willing to bet that's the same situation up in Canada as well. But it all comes back to the same thing. Everyone's always trying to pile into the same area. Look, this place is near Toronto. Everybody wants to be near Toronto because that's where the jobs are. This is where people can have a higher standard of living. But everyone is clawing and fighting each other for the same house and the same job. And it's like, at what point does this insane rat race not make sense anymore? I think people need to start reevaluating this situation. And, as Americans, it's in our blood to be pioneers. Our original ancestors of this country came over from a whole nother continent, started the country here, fought for freedom, and then eventually branched out west, and we ended up turning this entire continent into a whole country. And so I think it's kind of time for a lot of people to start looking at this again as really the wave of the future if you want to have a better future, because otherwise the alternative is everybody just fighting for the same properties and the same jobs, and I would imagine that gets pretty old after a while. And Canada's having the same problem, guys, that we're having here in the US. People are just getting completely priced out because real estate there is even more expensive than it is here, and they also have high interest rates as well. So the main issue is that people are just being priced out, and they're saying, you know, we can't have rich foreigners come in here and buy up all our real estate right now because there's just not enough room for our own residents. So let me know what you guys think about this. I'm not going to get into any of the political aspects of it or anything like that. At first glance, it sounds refreshing to hear the government care more about its own citizens for a change than foreign investors coming in and bringing more money into the local area. So let me know what you guys think. Now, speaking of affordability and willing to change, guys, there are still 4 major cities in the US right now that are considered extremely affordable. But the thing is, just like we were talking about, most people probably don't want to live there because those places are Detroit, Michigan, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Memphis, Tennessee, and Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. So 2 of them are right there in Oklahoma. So that's one state I've never been to, but we're talking extremely cheap. We're talking starter home prices at $48,000 in Detroit, $95,000 in Tulsa, $87,000 in Memphis, and $126,000 in Oklahoma City. So these are extremely low housing prices considering the entire situation we're going through right now. And I know a lot of people aren't going to be jumping at moving to an area like this, but you know, as housing becomes more unaffordable in the most desirable areas, I think a lot of people are going to start moving to areas like this, and areas that used to be cheap are going to become expensive. You know, like, let me give you a good example of this. When I was on my road trip last summer, my first stop out of Illinois, where I stayed in, was Des Moines, Iowa. And I'd never been there before. I don't think I had ever even been to Iowa up until then. And it was much nicer than I expected, okay? So nice that, you know, if I were to move back to the Midwest, I would consider moving there. And one of the channels I like watching is Nick Johnson. He put up a video recently about Des Moines, and he said the same thing, that he thought it was a really nice area in the Midwest. It's still very affordable. And one thing he mentioned in that video, which was interesting, is that Des Moines is projected to grow from around 200,000 people right now to about 1 million people over the next 10 years. And if that prediction comes true, guess what's going to happen to housing prices in that area? So you can still buy a house right now there, nice house, decent house, for 180 grand. So my guess, guys, places like that are kind of undervalued and are still nice, clean American cities that have wages that are intact with the local housing costs, those places are going to see a rise in population during this recession because people are going to be just looking for an easier and more affordable lifestyle. And probably in 10 years from now, that house that costs $180,000 right now is probably going to cost $400,000 in 10 years from now. So I never say for people to buy based on appreciation if you're looking to just invest, for example. But even if you're just looking to live there, and getting that type of appreciation over 10 years ain't a bad deal, and keeping a super low mortgage payment. Talk about building some free equity over the years. That could be a good opportunity. Just wanted to share that as a good example of a place where a lot of people have kind of overlooked in the past, but that might become more desirable in the future, just like these other 4 cities we just talked about. If you want to make sure you always catch the latest uploads from me, make sure to click the bell notification down below this video. And if you don't want to wait for that, check out my next video on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.